Settlers landed in America on this day, April 26, 1607, at the site of Cape Henry, named for Prince Henry of Wales. Their first act was to erect a wooden cross and commence a prayer meeting. They ascended the James River, named for King James, and settled Jamestown, Virginia, the first permanent English settlement in America. Virginia, so named for the Virgin Queen Elizabeth, stated in its charter, "For the furtherance of so noble a work in propagating of Christian religion to such people as yet live in darkness and miserable ignorance of the true knowledge and worship of God."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD.
VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
A Friday news roundup and comments. We thank you for joining us. Good afternoon if you are in fact listening to us live, or, well, good day if you are catching possibly a repeat broadcast or maybe getting this by a download at some point. In for Jim Schneider, I am Dalton Windsor. Where is Jim? Where is Jim? We'll talk about that in just a little while. He is just fine. He's very busy. A busy day and coming weekend for VCY America. We'll, Lord willing, elaborate on that in just a little while. It has been another busy week for our country, and our thanks to Sister Sandy for compiling these stories that we can share with you here on News Roundup and Comment today. We have Brother Dennis in Master Control and just the entire team working behind the sounds to get all of this to you today, and we'll do the best we can because this is quite a stack of things. But we do appreciate the fact that we can bring these news stories to you, and just trust the Lord will help us make sense of all that is going on in a country that we love, in our country of America that we love. God shed His grace on thee. He truly has. There's never been another country like it. There's never been another country more blessed with so many wonderful giftings and freedoms that we have that came at a price, that came at a great price. And we see so many things being threatened in the day in which we live. And we've always been so fortunate to be able to have court, a nation of laws, and our days in court, if you will, the opportunities that we have to seek justice and live free, and we see everything really at a tipping point. Is a term that I know Jim has used many times. That we're a nation at a tipping point in so many factions, and so we'll kind of get started here with obviously what we've all been hearing much about this week. As the never-ending Trump trials, they do continue in New York. And what is this trial lasting? How long is this one going to last? I think something of 5 or 6 weeks is what I have read, that we're just getting started in some fronts here for this latest one in New York. And, well, Trump is all business, and when he's had a chance to talk to the reporters, he's not wasting any time in just trying to talk the business of America. Just yesterday afternoon, making comments on Bidenomics.
Thank you very much. As you probably have heard, some very big things have happened, but the biggest seems to be that the GDP just announces all the way down to 1.6%, and it's heading south. It's going to get worse. Gas prices in California were just also announced at $7.60. Gasoline is going way up. Energy costs are going way up. And the stock market is, in a sense, crashing. The numbers are very bad. This is Bidenomics. It's catching up with them. It's lucky that it's catching up before he leaves office as opposed to after he leaves office. But this is Bidenomics. It's destroying our country at the border, destroying our country with other countries. They no longer respect the United States. I think the dollar's in tremendous trouble in terms of currency. This is going to be the standard, and it's going to be the standard with me. With Biden, you're going to lose. The dollar is the standard. That'll be like losing the biggest war we've ever lost. And it's a shame, but it's all the way down to 1.6, and I'll tell you, nobody thought that would be possible, and it looks like it's heading down from there.
While the press was there to ask him many questions, obviously he immediately took to attacking Bidenomics, as he called it, and then also said that he had a chance to talk with some like-minded folks.
This morning I met with great people, construction workers, some Teamsters, and other unions, and some not in unions, and we had a fantastic morning. You were there. Some of the press was there. Great show of support. As you know, some tremendous polls came out over the last 24 hours where we're up in all of the swing states and up nationally. But one came out where we're down very little in New York. New York traditionally isn't won by Republicans anymore. It used to be 50 years ago, but not anymore.
Well, again, Donald Trump facing, he's in New York facing 34 felony accounts of falsifying business records to conceal hush money payments for alleged extramarital affairs. And this would have been all before he was president. You know, it's tough to follow along with all of this. It really is to make heads or tails of what this charge is about or what this trial is about, and why doesn't anything ever end up sticking? And that's really where this is commencing for our time here today. Is that Trump saying that this is just. It's not going to stick.
In the meantime, I'm at this trial. My constitutional rights have been taken away from me. But every single expert, every legal scholar, every respected scholar has said this is no case. There is no case here. This is just a political witch hunt. Thank you very much. How are you feeling about the Supreme Court argument?
And, time will go on, and we'll see where all this continues to go. And, well, obviously we can begin talking about Trump, as he's clearly the front runner to take on President Biden this November. It's another heated election year. And Joe Biden this week, not necessarily speaking so much about Bidenomics and any of his successes or the growth of the economy or anything like that, anything that he's been able to accomplish recently. But he has been on the campaign trail, and it's not been a good week for President Biden as far as gaffes. Now, I want to be very careful here because I could easily misspeak. I have a microphone in front of me right now, and folks know we are human, right? We do say things wrong. We do make mistakes, and no one is expecting perfection. And there's only been one person who is perfect, and that's our Lord Jesus Christ. And we understand that, and we don't want to forget that even the President of the United States is human. However, when you're the leader of the free world, can we afford to have someone that is known for gaffes and just constantly? Again, it's not like it's every once in a while, but it is, friends, it's all the time. On Tuesday, he may have spoken a whole lot of truth. Some people believe that he did. President Biden on the campaign trail and wasting no time at attacking Donald Trump. And we'll just let this play out. President Biden.
Now in America today, in 2024, women have fewer rights than their mothers and their grandmothers had because of Donald Trump. Look, I don't think we're going to let him get away with it, do you? No! And folks, in a sense, I don't know why we're surprised by Trump. How many times does he have to prove we can't be trusted?
Speaking of Donald Trump, Joe Biden said, you just heard it, how many times does he, speaking of Trump, how many times does he have to prove we can't be trusted? Next page. President Biden appearing to, well, read the very words on his teleprompter. And he was at a speech at a trade union conference in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, and reading from a teleprompter appeared to incorporate script instructions that are like on the screen there that he would just read for himself but then not share with the audience. Well, he just was reading it verbatim. And here it is.
I see an America where we defend democracy, not diminish it. I see an America where we protect freedoms, not take them away. I see an economy that grows from the middle out and the bottom up, where the wealthy pay their fair share, so we can have child care, paid leave, and so much more, and still reduce the federal deficit and increase economic growth. Folks, imagine what we can do next. 4 more years. Pause. 4 more years. 4 more years. 4 more years.
So the script on the teleprompter that was before him that he uses, the leader of the free world, reading it verbatim, and he says 4 more years, pause. Well, of course, his critics went right after him for making that sort of a gaffe, even mocking the president for such a blatant mess up. Indiana Republican Representative Jim Banks saying this man is not mentally fit to be president. Fox News contributor Steve Cortez explaining Biden's teleprompter blunders would be funny if he weren't president. Red State columnist Buzz Patterson remarked, "Oh, we're going to pause his 4 more years," meaning that implying that he will lose the election in the fall. And friends, that is certainly up for discussion. But many believe that there are, well, many shouting yes for 4 more years of what? 4 more years of what is going on. Ron Paul, in an article this week. Now, Ron has actually been on, Jim's had Ron on this program. In fact, I looked back, it was May of 2022. Jim, if you're hearing this, almost 2 years ago when Ron Paul was your guest. And Ron wrote an article, and I'm probably this will take us up to the break here, but he says the title was Final Nail in America's Coffin, which is a terrible thought. But when Ron joined us in 2022, the subject matter was a nation in economic turmoil. Well, we're in much more than economic turmoil now, 2 years later. But Ron Paul said that when future historians go searching for the final nail in the U.S. coffin, they may well settle on the date, Saturday, April 20th of 2024. Here's why. On that day, Congress passed legislation to fund 2.5 wars, to hand what's left of our privacy over to the CIA and the NSA, and to give the U.S. president the power to shut down whatever part of the internet that he disagrees with. The nearly $100 billion grossly misnamed National Security Supplemental guarantees that Ukrainians will continue to die in that country's unwinnable war with Russia, that Palestinian civilians will continue to be slaughtered in Gaza with U.S. weapons, and that the neocons will continue to push us toward a war with China. It was a total victory for the war party. In an article from Ron Paul, The Final Nail in America's Coffin. There's more of this, but we have to take this short break. Stay with us.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris. geologist and president of the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, are spiders ever found in the fossil record?
Yes, unbelievably, Chris, they are. Not only spiders, but sometimes spider webs are found. A spider and its web was found in amber, which was dated by evolutionists at 190 million years old. Now, I don't buy the date. I think the amber was formed at the time of Noah's flood. But think how silly this makes the millions of years idea look. Spider silk is so fragile, it dehydrates and deteriorates quite quickly. Does anybody really think it's going to last for 190 million years? Chris, a better idea is out there. It's the back to Genesis idea of creation and the flood.
If you'd like to go back to Genesis, you can find us on the web at www.icr.org. For the Institute for Creation Research, I'm Chris O'Brien. Thanks for tuning in.
Back on Crosstalk on the VCY America Radio Network, Friday News Roundup and Comments. Just before the break, sharing from an article this week from Ron Paul and his institute, his article titled Final Nail in America's Coffin. And he's all talking about something that took place a week ago, would be Saturday, April the 20th of 2024, the day that Congress passed legislation to fund 2.5 wars, to also hand over what's left of our privacy over to the CIA and the NSA, and to also give the U.S. president the power to shut down whatever part of the internet that he disagrees with. He says the huge spending bill is all about politics for President Biden, yet so many Republicans simply went along with it. The last thing the people running Biden's White House want to see as a close election approaches are ads blaming Biden for losing Ukraine. The U.S. and its allies have already sent over $300 billion, that's with a B, $300 billion to Ukraine, and the country is still losing its war with Russia. Nobody believes another $60 billion, another $60 billion will pull a victory from the jaws of defeat. But this now additional money is meant to keep up appearances until November at the expense of Americans who are forced to pay for it and Ukrainians who are forced to die for it. Ron Paul continues saying, Speaker Johnson could not have passed these monstrosities without the full support of House Democrats, as the majority of Republicans voted against more money for Ukraine. So in the worst example of bipartisanship, Johnson reached across the aisle, stiffed the Republican majority that elected him Speaker, and pushed through a massive gift to the warfare, the corporate welfare state. A few more lines here. Ron Paul says, after the House voted to send another $60 billion to notoriously corrupt Ukraine, members waved Ukrainian flags on the House floor and chanted, Ukraine, Ukraine. While I find that distasteful and disgusting, in some way it seemed fitting. After all, they may as well chant the name of a foreign country because they certainly don't care about ours. Along with sending $100 billion that we don't have to fund more overseas war, Speaker Johnson threw in another version of the TikTok ban, which gives Joe Biden and future presidents the power to shut down websites at will by simply declaring them to be, quote, foreign adversary controlled, end of quote. Ron Paul adds, not to be outdone, the U.S. Senate on that same day passed, the day he's speaking of is April 20th, Saturday, April 20th of 2024. Not to be outdone, the U.S. Senate that same day passed the extension of Section 702 of the FISA Act, which not only allowed the government to continue spying on us without a warrant, but also contained new language massively expanding how they can spy on us. Many conservative voters are asking what the point of Republican control of the House is if the agenda is determined by Democrats. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer even reported to have bragged to his colleagues about how easily Speaker Johnson gave Democrats everything they wanted and asked for nothing in return. Finally, Ron Paul says, what is the silver lining in all of this bad news? Most Republicans in the House voted against continuing the support of the Ukraine war. That's a good start. Our ideas are growing, not only across the country, but even in the D.C. swamp. And he closes with some encouraging words saying, take courage, don't give up, work for peace. Again, an article this week titled Final Nail in America's Coffin from Ron Paul. We mentioned and played a clip in the last segment as President Biden was on the campaign trail this week, and the crowd was shouting 4 more years. Well, if President Joe Biden is reelected for another 4 years, this from Town Hall says that Americans better be prepared to see massive tax hikes as the country faces record high inflation. Biden vowed to keep former President Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts expired for another 4 years, meaning that middle-class and low-income Americans would see higher taxes beginning in 2025. Something positive this week that the President Biden has done. President Joe Biden saying that Israel has an ironclad right to exist. Well, folks know that. They have a biblical mandate to exist. But we would agree with what is being said here, that Israel has the right to exist as an independent state, a departure from his recent attempts to pressure Israel into a ceasefire with Hamas. Biden made the declaration in a statement to mark the Jewish Passover celebration earlier this week, saying that the president said, this holiday reminds us of a profound and powerful truth that even in the face of persecution, if we hold on to faith, we shall endure and overcome. We can never forget the horror of Hamas' despicable atrocities, referring to last October 2023. Biden said that my commitment to the safety of the Jewish people, the security of Israel, and its right to exist as an independent Jewish state is ironclad, he continued. My administration is working around the clock to free the hostages, and we will not rest until we bring them home. Now, we obviously know that Joe Biden is also in favor of working toward a two-state solution that he says would provide equal security and prosperity and enduring peace for Israelis and the Palestinians. But the two-state solution, we know what is involved and what conflict there is in that. A couple of other things that the president has accomplished this week. The Biden administration finalizing a rule this Wednesday that bans the use of natural gas in new federal buildings. The Department of Energy announcing the final rule, which requires federal agencies to phase out and ultimately eliminate the on-site use of fossil fuels starting in 2030, the year 2030. Sounds kind of sci-fi to think of the year 2030, but friends, how far away is that? New federal buildings constructed after 2030 will not be allowed to have the natural gas hookups required to power gas stoves and other appliances under the final rule. Ahead of this 2030 mandate, the rule will require new buildings and those undergoing significant renovation between 2025 and 2029 to reduce fossil fuel use by 90%, according to America's Department of Energy. One more quick story here on President Biden, the emergence of COVID-19. Let's rewind to the year 2020. The emergence of COVID-19 during the 2020 presidential election in the U.S., it did spawn a flood of fear about the virus and the fact that it came out, the believed fact that it came out of China and circled the globe. This from WorldNet Daily. Activists jumping on the opportunities that emergency threats posed. Now we're in the 2024 election, and word that President Biden may declare, just as the campaign is getting hot, a climate emergency. We've had the COVID emergencies during an election year, and it looks like now it's possible that we will have a climate emergency. The White House officials weighing whether to declare a national climate emergency several months out from the 2024 election. The report said, citing people interviewed by Bloomberg, there is no actual, quote, emergency with the climate. Thousands of scientists have signed on to a statement that such an emergency doesn't exist. In fact, some of the biggest proponents of claims that the circumstances will cause sea levels to rise and inundate millions of people in coastal cities are the ones who have purchased beachfront mansions for millions. The report said that Biden's advisors have resurrected conversations about such a declaration. And we'll let them hash all of those things out. And Jim's had so many guests on this program refuting the decades and decades of claims on this climate hoax. That's what the experts, the guests that we have had on this program, the climate hoax. And how many times have taxes went up in the name of, in the past, in fear of rising troubles and from climate issues, and we've got to do this and we've got to do that. And the taxes going up are usually the only fallout from the warnings, these climate warnings. Isn't that interesting? Look it up. We'll use a little sarcasm here. Look it up and see what they're saying. We should turn our attention to Israel for just a little bit. Obviously, we just did with the talk of President Biden saying, his ironclad support of Israel's right to exist. Well, we all agree with that. Everyone agrees with that. Now, they will debate a two-state solution. But he also made a mention, President Biden also made mention that we want to get the hostages released. This from Town Hall. In a joint statement yesterday, Thursday, the U.S. and 17 other nations whose citizens are being held hostage by Hamas called for their release. Hamas has been holding the hostages for more than 200 days, that from the White House, and their fate is of international concern. This statement was co-signed by the leaders in Argentina, Austria, Brazil, Bulgaria, Canada, Colombia, Denmark, France, Germany, Hungary, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Serbia, Spain, Thailand, and the United Kingdom. We, the U.S. and 17 other nations, issuing this joint statement calling on Hamas to release the hostages. And the quote here, we strongly support the ongoing mediation efforts in order to bring our people home. The statement added, we reiterate our call on Hamas to release the hostages. Let us end this crisis so that collectively we can focus our efforts on bringing peace and stability to the region. How many hostages are there? Well, one report here from Israel National News, a senior Hamas official saying that the terror group's military arm is in fact holding 30 IDF soldiers, Israeli Defense Force soldiers. Hamas is holding 30 of their soldiers, telling Al Jazeera, names that were not publicized, saying that Hamas trapped 30 soldiers on October 7th and that the soldiers are now far from the hands of what they call the occupation. The official added that the captive soldiers and commanders are being held in high security locations. It is impossible to reach them under any circumstances. Also from Israeli National News, Khalil al-Hayya, a top Hamas official, on Wednesday told the AP in Istanbul that the terror group would agree to a ceasefire of 5 years or more and agree to lay down its weapons if. Well, right now there's not time for the if. We'll take this break. We'll come back and pick this one up. We're also going to answer the question, where is Jim? Dalton Windsor in for Jim Schneider. We'll answer that question on the other side. Stay with us. there is a significant uptick in the intensity of the issues bombarding us. It's not a single battle being waged, but an all-out war on numerous fronts. The attack on biblical values, the demonizing of Christianity, escalating lawlessness, the emerging secular agenda, and the growing control of the populace are all unfolding. These assaults share the common thread of globalism. Globalism by the powerful elite in order to have supremacy over the people, their land, government, commerce, energy, and even religion. In the book Globalism, The Great World Consumption, author Richard Smith tackles these matters head-on by not only looking at the perilous times in which we live, but to see how this lust for control is propelling us toward a one-world political system and both a one-world economic and religious system. The book Globalism is available from VCY for a donation of $16 or more when you call 1-800-729-9829. And we are back on the VCY America radio network. Again, in for Jim Schneider, Dalton Windsor. Where is Jim? Well, he's been here in the studio, of course, all week. It has been another great week of programs and helpful information. And if you get a chance, log on to crosstalkamerica.com and spend a little time. Maybe you missed some of the programs this week or you would like to hear them again. Yesterday, a great program with Brother Bill Federer on Christian nationalism. That was just yesterday's program, and we always learn much when Bill Federer is a guest. Then back on Wednesday, Jim did a program on the Passover and the exploding anti-Semitism. On Tuesday this week, not that the other programs were not favorites of mine as well, but probably my favorite show this week was Tuesday when Pastor Robert Morgan was our guest, and Jim talked with him regarding whatever happens for the Christian, whatever happens, standing firm when the world is falling apart. That was Tuesday's program, and you can listen to any of these shows again, these programs again. They're available for you on demand at crosstalkamerica.com, crosstalkamerica.com. You can also call our switchboard. You could maybe request what we call a hard copy of these. If you'd like a compact disc of this to maybe in the car or still have a home player, whatever the case may be, let us know how we can help you in that fashion. But on top of all of that, we are prepping for a busy weekend of ministry here at VCY America, as we are having the second of our 2 spring rallies here in southeast Wisconsin. Obviously, you listening in Kansas or maybe California, not going to be very easy for you to actually join us for this rally tomorrow night, but we will, God willing, have it for you on the VCY America network. We'll be broadcasting that on Saturday night. And it was really nice because earlier today, in fact, on this morning's report, Jim got to speak for a few minutes with our special guest, Pastor Andy Woods, who will be joining us for this rally.
You are speaking tomorrow night on the Signs of the Times, and I'd like you, if you would, just give us a sneak preview of the type of things that you'll be talking about tomorrow night.
Well, kind of the basis of the talk is something that Jesus said there in Matthew 16, up north geographically in Caesarea Philippi, and he sort of rebuked the religious leaders of his day because they knew how to interpret, weather, red sky in the morning, sailor take warning, but they didn't know how to interpret the signs of the times, and they should have known, the season they were living in, because Old Testament or Hebrew Bible has a lot of signs related to his first coming. So I'm just sort of taking that same concept and expanding it to the second coming, not of setting a date, of course, but just to alert people to the signs that are, I believe, setting the stage for the second advent of Christ that we can focus on, be aware of, and what are those? I've got about 7 categories of signs. Signs related to Israel, signs related to technology, signs related to morality, things of that nature. And then most importantly, so what? What does it mean for the Christian? what does it mean for the believer? What does it mean for the unbeliever? And so that's sort of the direction I'm hoping to head in at the conference.
Great. Certainly, we are watching with great interest what's happening with Israel right now and the number of nations coming against her, but the growing unrest and the growing anti-Semitism that's peaking up, on college university campuses here in the U.S. and in many of the blue-related cities. We really should be perking our ears up at this, should we not?
Yeah, because the Scripture talks about how the world will turn against Israel. And I guess the big shock of my life is I always thought those were prophecies that would happen at some future generation. And here it is. You mentioned the unrest at our universities, the river to the sea.
Yep.
Types of protests. That we're seeing. Even here in the late, great United States of America, some of our political leaders demanding that Israel receive some kind of two-state solution, or demanding that Israel doesn't have a right to defend herself, root out Hamas from Gaza. All these things that are happening, they're actually predicted in the Bible as general trends that you can look at related to the soon return of Jesus. And so that's a major trend. We'll look at several others, but that's kind of the idea of where I'm hoping to take things.
Pastor Andy Woods joining us for a morning report with Jim here on the VCY America Radio Network. And God willing, the broadcast Saturday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central Time, the rally, the Sign of the Times, and we've been promoting that on our stations, and we would, of course, love it if you could tune in for that this weekend. Just before the break there, and we wanted to get that in, but we were talking on that report from Israel National News and how it is that Hamas says that they would disarm, that they would agree to a ceasefire for 5 years or more if they would agree to lay down weapons if an independent Palestinian state were created along the pre-1967 borders. Now, we don't have time to go into a history lesson here as regarding what all of that is, but any of you that have been following this for years, there's seemingly been many agreements throughout the years and things that Israel was willing to do, but then that the Palestinians would not. And so they are trying to look like they're being diplomatic. In this interview with AP, this man, Khalil al-Hayya, a top Hamas official, said that Hamas wants to join the Palestine Liberation Organization, that's the PLO, headed by Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas, to form a unified government for Gaza, Judea, and Samaria. According to al-Hayya, Hamas is willing to accept a fully sovereign Palestinian state in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and the return of Palestinian refugees in accordance with the international resolutions along the pre-1967 borders. Such a state would see central Israel become virtually impossible to defend, leaving Israel vulnerable to a de facto split into two separate areas which would not be able to communicate with each other. Should Israel agree to such a scenario, al-Hayya said, Hamas would dissolve its military wing. And speaking of Israel, and again, thanks to Sandy, we have so many stories here in front of us. We should mention this one. On Israel, the Soros clan, George Soros, the Soros clan has been accused of providing an estimated $15 million to the pro-terrorist groups storming cities in support of Hamas, and providing an estimated $758,000 already to Biden. Both of those are only partial estimates of much larger spending by the Soros family and other radical billionaires, which have simultaneously been funding this anti-Israel movement. The Trojan Horse Jewish groups and the Democratic Party politicians whom they are busy pressuring. This from jihadwatch.org. $60 million has been pumped from the Soros network into its own democracy, the PAC, to help Democrats win. Millions from that PAC have gone to the Democratic Party's Senate Majority PAC and House Majority PAC. You wonder, you can always follow the money and you see what is going on, and think of this. All of these terrorist groups storming cities, and how are they able to do all of that? How are these people able to go and stay and occupy so long and maintain? Well, somebody's funding it. And you just heard Pastor Woods there talking about, and he and Jim talking about college campuses. It's been a horrible week in America for that, and all of the protests that have been going on college campuses. Columbia University on Tuesday announcing that it is shifting to hybrid learning for the remainder of the semester as anti-Israel protests continue to disrupt campus life. An email sent by Associate Dean Matthew Potashnik to Columbia University families announces that all courses at the Morningside main campus will be hybrid, with the exception of arts and practice-based courses for the remainder of the semester. On Monday, Columbia University President Shafiq condemned the intimidating and harassing behavior that has occurred on the New York City campus. New York City police arrested 108 anti-Israel activists at Columbia University last Thursday after the president asked law enforcement to step in and break up the Gaza Solidarity encampment at NYU, this New York City campus. On Monday, Columbia University leaders prevented Professor Shai Davidai from entering campus and had deactivated his university ID card. I don't know, there's still probably so much more to learn about all that's going on in our universities, but the anti-Israel sentiment, the anti-Semitism that's coming from U.S. college campuses. Speaker Mike Johnson facing chants and boos from pro-Palestinian protesters who attempted to drown out House Republicans' speeches as they called on Columbia University president to resign over rising anti-Semitism on campus. This from the Washington Examiner. Speaker Johnson was joined by Representatives Mike Lawler of New York, Anthony D'Esposito of New York, also a couple of others from New York, all on Wednesday blasting the president there for failed leadership and her inability to keep Jewish students safe on campus. And Speaker Johnson said, "I'm here to proclaim to all those who gnash their teeth and demand to wipe the state of Israel off the map and attack our innocent Jewish students this simple truth. Neither Israel nor these Jewish students on this campus will ever stand alone." That is Speaker Mike Johnson. Johnson gave his speech, and a large crowd of pro-Palestinian protesters were shouting, "We can't hear you," while others shouted, "Free Palestine," and other anti-Israel chants. Speaker Johnson said in response to them that were shouting at him, he said, "Enjoy your free speech." Enjoy the free speech that you have in this country. And calls for the president of that university to resign, saying that she has lost control of this campus. She has lost control of this institution. Speaker Johnson called the pro-Palestinian encampment on the campus lawn detestable and condemned the president there and the university for allowing lawless agitators and radicals to take over. Wow. And just as appalling will be what we will share with you when we continue on the other side of this break. You're listening to Crosstalk.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website is worldviewreport.com. When I went to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation website at wisconsindot.gov, what did I find? Openly on the website, Wisconsin ID card for voting purposes. And what did I find? That so-called U.S. citizens can get a free ID for voting, even if you don't have any documentation available. And then I started searching other states. Apparently, this is becoming a real problem. And then we found a flyer that is now being cited by members of the U.S. House of Representatives that was being passed out in Mexico as illegals were coming over the border, encouraging them to vote for Joe Biden so the border can stay open. How is it that illegals are voting? If you're not a citizen here, how is this possible? Well, it's because many states now are openly encouraging illegal aliens to vote. Are you concerned about this fall election?
Already the final segment for News Roundup and Comment. We will not be taking calls today. Thank you to Molly, though, who has been standing by in case we did get there. The news stories are just so many. We want to give due diligence to some of the things that we do. Simply, friends, we do want you to be aware of. And God willing, we are going to read one of the most special little stories that we have found this week to close out the program. I'd like to mention, maybe talk about the border, or our lack of a border here in this country, which truly has had to have contributed to why we are now hearing on the streets of U.S. cities, death to Israel, death to America. Because, and Elon Musk has been quoted, we've got the quote, he has been quoted to saying, we now have, in the last 3 years, the equivalent of 36 of our states that has come into this nation. We don't know who they are. 36 U.S. states, we have now have the equivalent. That's how many have come into our country in the last 3 years. The population of 36 of our states. And these folks are being encouraged to vote, friends. And so why wouldn't we be hearing these now on the U.S. city streets? Death to Israel, death to America. And let me tell you, they're starting early. Here's a headline this week. Drag Queen Story Hour becomes Free Palestine indoctrination for kids. This from Hot Hair News. Radical leftists have combined Drag Queen Story Hour for talking to kids and indoctrinating them in such a way. What way? Take a listen to this.
Today what we're going to do is we're going to shout, Free Palestine. Can I hear that? Free Palestine! If you're a drag queen and you know it, shout, Free Palestine!
Now, it may be tough to hear, but this is audio from a drag queen speaking to kids and saying that if you're a drag queen and you know it, shout Free Palestine. This is happening in America.
Today what we're going to do is we're going to shout, Free Palestine. Can I hear that? Free Palestine! If you're a drag queen and you know it, shout, Free Palestine! If you're a drag queen and you know it and you really want to show it, you're a drag queen and you know it, shout, Free Palestine! Excellent!
So, that was in Queer Story Time for Palestine. The organization staged the event Valley Families for Palestine in Connecticut Valley. That was earlier this week. Yesterday, this was published, saying that we came together in joy and solidarity, learned some important lessons about being ourselves, using our voices to speak out against injustice, and being fabulous while we do it. A man dressed in drag talking to these little ones and encouraging them politically, shouting Free Palestine. We talk about how did this happen. We we're running out of time here, but, our border, or the lack of one for now 3 years, over 3 years, has led to what we're hearing about shouts of death to Israel, death to America from city streets. This from Town Hall, just the headline: thousands of illegal immigrants with pounds of fentanyl have been apprehended by Border Control. The San Diego border sector broke records for apprehending the most illegal aliens during the first 21 days of April after San Diego sector Border Patrol agents encountered more than 25,000 immigrants. Not only did Border Patrol agents arrest tens of thousands of illegal immigrants, they also seized hundreds of pounds of drugs that would have otherwise ended up in the United States. Here is a story from WorldNet Daily. An illegal alien from Mexico broke into a Michigan home and sexually assaulted 2 girls under the age of 13. 25-year-old Miguel Hernandez Ruiz broke into a mobile home near Sturgis and sexually assaulted 2 sisters under the age of 13. Miguel Hernandez Ruiz threatened to kill the girls if they tried to scream, according to court documents from Fox 17. The man was hit with multiple charges, including first-degree criminal sexual conduct involving a child under the age of 13 and home invasion. He was arraigned a week ago Friday. The sexual assault happened March 20, as police did finally track down the individual in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And that is heavy. That is heavy, listening friends. One more thing, and if we have the time, back to our college campuses here in our country, and Americans standing seemingly in solidarity, saying that Israel's got to go. You got to hear this. You just got to.
You know what NYU's doing? About what? About.
Let me stop. They ask a young lady there, "What are you protesting?"
You know what NYU's doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free.
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
Oh.
I came from Columbia. I was there up at Columbia, and we came down. They said NYU students needed our support, so I came down. I heard there's lots of cops. Some people were saying it was getting dangerous.
These are our young people here in our country, and they're joining in the crowds, and we have the young lady saying there, we don't really know what we're protesting. We don't really know. We wish we were more educated. Well, here's a wonderful story. We're going to change gears now. Do you remember 17-year-old Cameron Blasek, an Indiana teenager who refused to take the American flag off of his pickup when administrators at his school demanded him to do so? Well, the story is he doubled down and he covered his entire truck with the U.S. flag. A Cincinnati graphic design company wrapped it for him, wrapped his truck. And long story short, a young man in Oklahoma, a 13-year-old who was dying with cancer, asked to have a ride in that truck. And without thinking twice, young man Cameron and his dad hit the road for that long trip from Indiana to Oklahoma, that young boy could take a ride in this now famous Stars and Stripes truck. God bless that young man.
Listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.